So here's the Nagpal family reviewing Dangal and giving you the 10 reasons why you must watch Dangal.
Reason number 1.
So most sports films suffer from predictability. It cannot just be about who wins and who beats whom. There have to be other parallel tracks to give it substance and to keep you hooked onto something else. I mean, great films like Remember the Titans, for example, sports film, had this thing about racism. Escape to Victory had the Germans versus the Allies kind of a scenario. And I thought Dangal did that quite brilliantly as well in terms of the parallel tracks that they had.
I completely agree. One parallel track that I noticed was the theme of women empowerment.
Right?
It was brought out so well.
And
loved it.
I mean, more than just women empowerment, I thought it was about how a girl child is viewed differently versus the boys, and especially in our villages, even today, but right from the time they're born or what direction they're pushed into, that whole element was brought out well. Another parallel track I thought was about our sporting federations and what role do they play or not play in the nurturing of a champion and why our medal tally is so low. Then another thing was about coaching techniques and how they really differ from coach to coach. The different strategies that you have to play in sports, I thought that was an excellent parallel track running in the background. Then there's this whole point of instinct versus science. What should you go for? I mean, do you, for example, tell a Sehwag to change his technique because it doesn't fit? Or do you let him be? And what's the coach's role in that as well? I thought another point was made brilliantly was about the kind of ruthless focus champions need to have to win in any or excel in any discipline, whether sports or academia, and how easy it is to basically kind of lose that focus sometimes. Another point was for me on egos and how easily they kind of come in your way at different points in time. A last point I thought, but very important for me, was about how there is sometimes a switch, and I really believe this point, there's sometimes a switch that needs to click. You can be taking a horse to water, but you can't be forcing the horse to drink. But at a certain point, a simple incident may trigger that switch, which makes you then go for it and want to. And I thought that kind of track also ran extremely well in parallel throughout the film, right? At different moments in time, you got those switches.
Reason number 2.
It was a very emotional film, which means it basically had a range of emotions everywhere. Like you felt like laughing, sometimes you felt like crying, you felt angry. I cried thrice during the movie.
And laughed many times.
Yes.
I completely agree. Every emotion was brought out at least once during the film. For me, during the end, I felt like punching someone. I mean, I was really angry. And just the fact that a movie can bring out all these different emotions is just really
and it strung it together well.
Brilliant.
I also thought the interesting aspect is that it did so without getting too preachy or basically banging on something with the hammer on a nail. It did it very subtly. It was poignant without getting mawkishly sentimental, to the point Ambika made about the tears. And it didn't lose track of the plot at any point in time. Reason number 3.
Performances. Basically, the movie is about a man who has 2 daughters who are into wrestling, plus a nephew. For me, the one who stole the show was Fatima, one of the daughters in the elder mode. For me, her acting was basically based on her facial expressions. Whenever I could feel what she was going through. You could see when she was confident, when she was scared, nervous, and I loved how it was portrayed.
For me, it was Amir Khan's performance and the 3 youngsters, Zaira Wasim, Suhana Bhatnagar, Hani Bhatnagar, and Ritvik Sahore. They were all so brilliant in what they were supposed to do. Amir Khan played that tough, daunting father, and I think the 3 youngsters brought out that comical element, and they portrayed it so well.
And I think you also appreciated the kind of physical changes that they showed in Amir, right?
Completely. That was just mind-blowing.
Because from
a muscular, to the bloated, old...
Pot-bellied,
yeah, exactly. It was just mind-blowing.
I thought the youngsters completely agree with you. They stole the show for me, in fact, in the first half. I thought more than Amir, it was these 3 youngsters, these 3 kids who actually for me
Yes.
stole the show completely and overshadowed him to an extent. And in a way, that's credit to Amir as well. It was not about just I am the superstar, so every scene had to be me. He was very understated, and he let these kids,
Shine.
whether they were
Yeah.
in the younger avatar or whether they were in the older avatar, who shone. I thought, in fact, the other sister Sanya, who was actually not the main track
Yes,
in the
she
second
wasn't,
half,
but
but
she
she was extremely good as well, and
Yes.
in fact
Needed.
needed and enhanced the performances of the others as well.
Completely, yeah.
This guy, Apar Shakti Khurana, who's by the way Ayushman Khurana's brother, he played the nephew in the older avatar, and he was so good
Yeah.
as that role. Girish Kulkarni was the coach, and again he was so
also
good.
really good. Yeah.
And then there were so many cameos. I mean, after Sholay, I think there's a film where I enjoyed every little cameo in the movie as well, right?
I mean, there was a chicken seller person.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Just
It was
keeps
amazing.
popping
Yeah,
up
it
at
was
different
amazing.
moments and excellent. Then there was this Sporting Federation guy who can only think of the laddus that have been brought. There was the guy who's in the opening sequence in the office, the
Yes,
new
yeah,
guy
yeah.
who kind
Yeah,
of.
that was also
So,
really good.
I mean, there were so many little cameos which just made the movie gripping,
Yes.
right?
Completely.
Reason number 4.
Wrestling sequences. So in this movie, all the wrestling sequences were extremely well picturized. They felt so real. Everything about it, well researched scenes, the movements, the fight scenes, everything, and they were so un-Bollywoodish. Yeah,
Very
there's-
non-filmy.
Yes.
It felt like they were
Yeah,
really happening.
there
The
was
matches
no-
were really helping.
There was no stretching. There was no overdoing it. It was just perfect.
Yes.
They brought out the intricacies of the sport very well, I thought. In the sense of,
Yes.
every sport, it seems very easy on screen sometimes, but there's a lot of nitty-gritty strategies, etc. that
Yeah.
go into
Yeah.
sports. And in this one, with the different tricks they showed, the different
Yeah.
techniques shown, they brought out that sport extremely well. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if after this film, a lot of people kind of take up
Get
wrestling.
it.
Wrestling, yeah.
And another way I thought, in fact, you had made that point when we were talking about it on the way home, which was when you compare it to Sultan,
Yeah. it
is
was
when you
so
realize
good. It was
how
so
much
good.
better were the
Yeah.
fight sequences here, right?
Completely.
How much more real and
Yeah.
true to life.
The audience also learns more because they explain the sport a lot better than other sport films would have done probably. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Reason number 5.
So the second half here stays on point. And in most Hindi films, there's usually the curse of the second half where it all kind of unravels as a film, etc.
Yeah.
Here, there was no manufactured conflict. Everything seemed very real. People behaved as you would expect real characters in those situations to behave. They didn't try and make a false ego clash or get overly sentimental
Yes.
or have an unnecessary fight or anything. It stayed to point. This movie, the second half, is almost as good as the first half. And that's so rare in a Hindi
Yes.
film. Reason number 6.
In this movie, there are so many memorable scenes and moments that stay with you. For example, the early morning training sessions. I found them absolutely hilarious. And one thing I could relate to was how the girls were always so sleepy in school. It reminded me of how I am in school.
I can vouch for that.
For me, I thought the opening fight scenes was just brilliant. The opening fight scene where
I thought one thing there that
Yeah.
was really clever was how they interspersed a television commentary with the
That was-
events
yeah,
that
that
were
was
happening
really cool.
there.
Yeah.
So, really good.
Another scene that I found really amazing was the scene where the two girls beat up the boys. That was the spark of the movie, really.
Yeah.
There was also the first Dangal, the one
Yeah,
where they go
yes.
first,
Yes.
and the entire sequence around that, with,
Yes.
how they get in and
Yes.
how
was-
that scene
Definitely.
develops, and she's asked to choose, and all of that. The entire sequence was
It
excellent.
was really nice.
And here, I think the credit has to go to the dialogue writers and the script writer in terms
Yes,
of how
yeah.
cleverly they kind of put it together. There's 4 people actually who get writing credits. There's Piyush Gupta, Shreyas Jain, Nikhil Malhotra, and the director Nitesh Tiwari, who kind of get the writing credits for this. And they really got the language. The whole thing with the commentary done by the nephew.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
The commentary was hilarious. I mean, it was brilliant in terms of the words used to describe the kranti and
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
the Bagawat happened in the Chota town of Balali. So that was awesome. Hats off to the dialogue writers.
Reason number 7.
The music, the songs, and the lyrics were outstanding. They were amazing, and after a long time, I've enjoyed a movie soundtrack in its entirety so much. Amitabh Bhattacharya for the lyrics deserves a lot of credit. I mean, hats off to him for bringing in some totally new words, etc.,
Yes.
which you hadn't heard for a long time in Hindi film. I mean,
Definitely, I loved the song Hanikarak Baku.
Baku.
It was
I mean,
so
how
nice.
long since you heard the word Hanikarak in Hindi songs? There was another song called Dhakar, and that was amazing as well in terms of how they combine modern lingo with
Yes.
very old world
Yeah.
Hindi words like
Yes.
Dhakar,
Yes.
for example. The title track
That
had a
was
lot of
Dangal.
power
I love
as
it,
well,
I like
and so
that.
Pritham really deserves a lot of credit for the way he's put the music together for this. Very ethnic, and with that lovely rustic touch.
Reason number 8.
So there's this whole brouhaha about the Supreme Court order where it's made the national anthem compulsory at the beginning of every film. I mean, why only cinema halls?
Yeah.
Nobody's understood. And it's made it compulsory for everybody to stand up as well. And there's been a lot of Twitter outrage. I mean, where else? Around this particular order. Now, in this movie, there's a particular point where the national anthem plays. And you didn't need a Supreme Court order, but everybody
Everyone
in the hall
Yeah.
stood up. And everyone felt pride in our
Yes,
country.
definitely.
And I think that moment alone
Yeah.
is worth the price of a ticket.
Reason
Reason.
number 9.
Number 9,
This movie just doesn't feel like 161 minutes.
2 hours 41.
It does not.
It was. I wanted more, honestly, and it's very rare in Hindi movies.
That's
Any
true.
Bollywood movie. Just
And I mean, you won't believe it, but I've seen the movie twice in one day. And that doesn't happen
very rare.
very often. I just wanted to see it with the kids. And you really, when it ends, you don't feel it was that long
Yeah.
and you want more.
Reason number 10.
There are no real big negatives in this movie. I can't really think of any.
Yeah,
Is it?
true. I honestly can't think of any major ones.
I thought one was that the role of the sister. I think there was an interesting story there, and that didn't get enough
Yeah,
play.
I would have liked something
I would have
more
liked
about
something
her.
more for her. I felt she got shaded a bit, unfortunately.
Okay.
And really minor one for me was the subtitles. I thought they impeded, they distracted, and sometimes just because you were reading that instead, you missed on the beauty of the dialogue or the words being used there.
But I found them helpful
Yeah.
because some words you've never heard of, you don't understand it.
Is it?
So I mean, halfway through I was listening to what the dialogues, but in some
Honestly,
cases the subtitles were helpful.
They were helpful sometimes, but then during the songs, I don't really think we needed some.
So, okay, we agree to disagree. But
Rating.
ratings, guys!
So I'm going to give it a 9,
Oh.
9 or 10.
I'm gonna give it 10.
10.
10.
And I'm going to give it a 9 as well. So I think this is one of the
Quite high.
highest scored rated
Yeah.
films
Yeah.
that from the Nagpal clan. And with that, we wish you enjoy the movie as much as we did.
Yes.
Bye.
Definitely.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.